everyone, and welcome to this video. In this video, we're going to be looking at the special variables, args and kwargs, or let's call them special symbols. So these special symbols can allow us to pass a variable number of arguments onto a function. We're going to look at how we can use them, and we look at the various examples that can help us understand what these really mean. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to take care of is the args. So args stands for non-keyword arguments. So non-keyword arguments are simply arguments that you may pass on to a function, but you definitely don't know any name that you've given onto these functions. For example, if we created a function that adds two numbers, x as well as y, so this function is simply going to return the sum of these two numbers. So let's say it's going to return x plus y. So this function takes in two arguments, and let's actually go ahead and run this. So to run this, I'll just simply come and print this out since it just returns the sum. So if I want to see this in the console, I'll use print. So I'm just going to come right here and say it's going to print add, and then I'll provide the first argument as 2 as well as 3. So when I run this file, we're now going to see our value of 5 right here. So let me control and L to clear my terminal. So when I do that, let's look at actually an example where we have a third argument. So when I provide a third argument right here and run, we now see that we have an error, and this error is basically telling us that we have an extra argument or an extra positional argument. So we see type error, add, takes in two positional arguments but 3 are given. So this is actually disadvantageous as we cannot pass an extra argument onto this function. So let's say I wanted to actually make to pass in various amounts of numbers, and let's say add these numbers. So what you can do is actually write a function that takes in a list and then iterates through everything in the list, adding it to provide for us a sum. So let's rewrite this function. So I'm just going to come and basically comment this. I'm going to rewrite the function. So I'll say def add, and this is going to take in a list or an iterable of, let's say, numbers. So let's say list of numbers. And then what you can do is to print a result, which is going to be the sum. So I can just say our sum. We're going to initialize this to 0. So I can come and say that we're going to initialize our sum to 0. And when we initialize this to 0, we can go ahead and look through each of the elements in our list and then return value specifying the sum. So what we're going to do is actually say for I in our list of numbers. What you can do is actually add each of those numbers onto our sum. So I'm just going to come and say sum plus equals, and then this will take in our I. So after looping through each of the items in our list, then we're going to go ahead and just return our sum. So right after doing this, I'm going to go ahead and print this out to the console. So to print this out, I'm just going to simply call this function. So I'll just say print, and then I'm going to say add, and then create our argument as a list of numbers. So I'll just come right here and let's say provide 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So when I save this, when you run this, you actually expect that it's going to return 15, which is the sum of the numbers that are in our list of numbers. So let's go ahead and look at another example. So if you wanted to pass in values that are not actually a list, what would we do? So this is where args comes in. Args simply stands for non-keyword arguments. So let's say I wanted to create a function with a variable number of non-keyword arguments. So this means we can have 1, 2, 5, as well as 100 arguments within this function. So what I'm going to do is to comment this, and we're going to rewrite this function, and it's going to take in a variable number of keyword arguments. So to do that, I'll just come right here, and what I'll do is to say def add, and then I'll specify that this is going to take in args, which is going to be our iterable containing our varied number of arguments. So right in here, I can initialize our sum to 0 as well. So I can say equals to sum, and then I can look through each of the arguments. So I can say for I in args. Then what I can do is to actually go ahead and add each of the elements to our sum. So I'll do that with sum plus equals and then I, and then return the sum. So I'll just come and say return our sum. So once we return our sum, we expect then to provide a list of arguments. So this is actually going to be different. In this case, we don't have to do it like the way we did it for the first example, where we had to actually specify a list. So in this case, what we actually do is to print this out. So I'll print and then I'll come and say add and then provide our arguments normally. So I'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let's say 100 as well. So when I save this, we now run our function. So I'll run. And now we see that it's actually returning 115, which is the sum of all our arguments. Now let's look at something cool. So we can as well write a function with a defined number of arguments, and then we can be able to use this syntax or this notation to be able to call that function. So I'm going to recreate the same function. So I'll actually copy this function. Actually, it's not going to be copied. Let me just comment it for now. And when I comment this, I'm just going to simply come right here. So what I'll do is to create a function. So I'll create a function called add, and it's going to take in argument 1 and argument 2 as well as argument 3. So once we have this, then I can go ahead and call do the logic that this function is going to do. So let's say it's going to just print arg1, and let's say it's going to print, actually let's say we're going to use an f string in this case. So when I say arg1, say it's going to print arg1. Since we're using f strings, I'll put these curly braces. And once we have this, so we're going to print arg1 and then the value of arg1. So I'm just going to actually print this for the various arguments. So we're going to have arg2 as well as arg3. So I'll basically change this to arg2. This is going to be arg2. So I'll do the same thing for arg3. So this is actually going to be for arg3. So once we do this, we expect that this function is going to take in these arguments and then print them to the console. Now, if you want to use this args notation, what we can do is to actually actually create an iterable containing the various arguments. So for example, I can come right here, and what I can do is to say that our list, so I'm going to create an iterable, which is going to be a list in this case. It's going to take in the first argument as 1, the next argument as 2, and the next argument as 3. So once we've done this, I'm just going to come and call our function with this list of arguments. So to do that, I'll just come and say that we're going to have add, and then I'll say star, and then pass in my list since it's going to be our args in this case. So I'm just going to pass in list. And when I save this, when I run, I'm going to first clear our terminal with clear. So I'm just going to come and run this. And now we see that's going to actually work. It's going to print all of our non-keyword arguments. So right now we've seen that this is actually a list or an iterable containing our arguments. So now let's look at the keyword arguments. So keyword arguments are those arguments that we can give names. For example, name, weight, and so on. So I'm just going to come right here. I'm going to comment this. So let's say we created a similar function that takes in keyword arguments. So let's say I'm going to provide def, and then this is going to be a function. So let me call it print information, because it's just going to simply print information about a user or anyone. So I'll just come right here and say print info. So let's say it takes in a name, it takes in an age, as well as weight. So what I can do is to actually go ahead and print what this function returns. So I can just simply say print. Let's say this is going to be an f string containing the value of the name. So just going to have our name, and we shall also have our age. So I'll just say age, and this is going to have the value of our age. So let's also say we're going to have our weight as well. So we're going to say comma, and then this will also print our weight. So once we have this, I'm going to save, and we can be able to now return what each of these actually does. So to do this, I'm just going to come and call this function print info. So right now we have a name, so I'll provide our name. So our name is actually going to be, let's say, Jonathan. So I'm going to provide our name, Jonathan. And let's say we have our age. So our age in this case is actually going to be 23. And then you can also pass in our weight. So I can say weight. And then our weight is going to be, let's say, 23. So when I save this and try to print our keyword argument, so I can actually just call this function and see what it does at first. So when I run this, we now see that it's returning our name, our age, as well as our weight. So let me clear this. So after clearing this, then we can actually also access our keyword arguments. So in this case, keyword arguments is simply a dictionary containing all these arguments as well as their values. So if I went ahead and printed keyword arguments, so let's say I printed kwargs, I will actually, since we don't have kwargs in here, it won't work. So let me actually redefine the function. Just going to comment this. And so I'm going to comment this, and after commenting it, now I'm going to recreate the function, but in this case we're going to have keyword arguments. So I can just say def keyword arguments. So this actually means that this function can contain more than the three arguments that we've given it. So for example, if I said this is going to be a print info function, so this is actually going to have star and then our keyword arguments. So let's actually see what happens. So when I say print, we're going to print our keyword arguments. So when I save this, I can come and call the same function with these arguments. So I'm just going to copy it and paste it right here. So when I save, I'm going to run this exact function and let's see what happens. So when I run this, we now see that we have a dictionary containing each one of the arguments we've actually provided, or the keyword arguments. So we have the name as well as the value of the name, the age as well as the value of the age, as well as a weight. So let's go ahead and see how we can access each of the values within this list or within our dictionary of, it's actually a dictionary of keyword arguments. So to do that, I can say for I, or let's say for each of the keys and each of the values. So in our keyword arguments, so I'm just going to say it's going to be a keyword arguments. So I can go ahead and print both the key and the value. So what I'll do is to say print, and then right here I'll say that we're going to have our keyword argument. So I'll say it's going to be an F string containing the key. So our key in this case is going to be key, and then we shall have the value as well. So I'll just say it's going to be the value, and then the value of that key. So once we do this, then let's see what's going to happen. So if I come and run this, we now have too many values to unpack, and this is because we've actually called kwargs. Now remember, kwargs is a dictionary, and there are various methods we can call onto a dictionary. So what we can do is to actually call dot item, since it's going to return the various items within this dictionary. So if I went ahead and call this method onto our keyword arguments, so when I come and run this, we now see that it's actually unpacking it successfully and returning the key name with its value Jonathan, the age as well as its value, the weight as well as its value. So we can now see that we can actually pass in some extra keyword arguments. So for example, let's say we can pass in nationality. So I can come right here and say that the nationality of Jonathan is going to be a Ugandan. So when I come and run this, we now see that another keyword argument has been added onto our function. So this is very important as it can allow us to provide more keyword arguments onto a function which aren't actually specified in the function definition. So let's go ahead and look at how we can combine both arguments as well as keyword arguments on a function. So what we can have right here is a function. So I'm just going to create a function right here. Just going to come and create a function. So let's say it's going to be a function that prints, so let's say prints information. So I'm just going to call it print info. So let's say it takes in the age as well as the name. So these are actually defined arguments. So let's say it's going to take in other arguments. So you can say star args, and then you can also say star star kwargs, meaning it's going to take in keyword arguments. So once we have this means we can call this function with whatever args it has. So what we can actually do is to print. So I can come and print our age, which we know of. So I can say print age, and then this will return our age. So I'm actually going to say print age, and this will return the age. So for our args, I can actually say print, actually loop through every one in this iterable of args. So I can say for I in our args, I'm simply going to do the same thing. So I'll just come right here and print our args. So I'll just going to come and say print. So I'll provide this print statement right here. So to do that, I'll just come and say arg, and then I'll provide I, which is the value from our list of non-keyword arguments. So let's say we also want to return all the keyword arguments. So in this case, you can say for I in keyword, actually key value, whatever. So I'll just actually say for key as well as value. So this is actually going to be our value in our keyword arguments dot items. This is a dictionary. Then I'm just going to come and print an f string. So this is actually going to be an f string. So I'll say it's going to have our key, and then we shall have our value. So let's say I provide the value. So I'll just come right here and provide our value. So when I save this, I'm going to actually come and run this function. So let's say I provide this function. So I'm just going to come right here and say print info, or print info in this case. So let's say it takes in a name of 23, and let's say an age of 23, and a name of, let's say, Jonathan in this case. So it can even take in other args. So let's say it's going to take in args as, let's say, 23, let's say 34, and then let's say it's going to take in keyword argument. So let's say our weight, which is going to be let me actually say 24. So when I run this function, let's see what's going to actually happen. So when I come and run this, we now see it's going to print our age, it's going to print our arguments, it's going to as well print our keyword argument, which is our weight, and it's going to also provide our value. In this video, we'll be able to look at the special symbols, args and kwargs, and how we use them in the Python programming language. Thank you for watching, and if you found this video helpful, please consider sharing it with someone. Don't forget to comment, like, and share this video. And if you're new to my channel and this is the first time you've seen me, I create programming content on this channel, please consider subscribing and enable this channel grow. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye.